Okay, so today I want to discuss something that I believe is likely the most important geopolitical event of this entire century so far. And most people are completely overlooking what is truly happening. Tomorrow, Donald Trump travels to Beijing to meet Xi Jinping. Okay? And when most people hear this, they assume, oh, it's just a trade meeting. They are going to discuss tariffs. They are going to discuss semiconductors. Maybe they will talk about the Iran war. And then they will shake hands, fly back, and nothing will really change. That is completely incorrect. What is happening in Beijing tomorrow is not a trade negotiation. It is not a diplomatic formality. What is happening is this. The two most powerful men in the world are sitting down together to decide who will shape the 21st century. That is what is truly at stake. And I want to explain this to you very carefully today because once you understand what is actually going on, you will never look at this meeting the same way again. Okay? So let's begin. First, I want to give you some context because to understand why this meeting is so important, you need to understand the situation that both men are walking into it with. Let's start with Trump. Okay, Trump is entering this meeting from a position of weakness. And I know that sounds strange. America is still the most powerful military in the world, but military power and strategic power are two very different things. And right now, strategically, Trump is in serious trouble. Think about what has happened in the last few months. America went to war with Iran, and the war did not go the way anyone expected. Iran did not surrender. Iran did not collapse. Instead, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, which carries 20% of the world's oil, and the global economy began to feel the pressure. Oil prices went up, global supply chains were disrupted, and Americans who were never enthusiastic about this war in the first place became even less supportive. And then Trump needs to find a way out. He needs an exit from the Iran war, but he cannot find that exit alone. He needs help. And who is the only person in the world who can help him get out of this war? Xi Jinping. Because China is Iran's largest oil customer. China is Iran's most important economic partner. If China tells Iran, okay, it is time to come to the table, Iran listens. Not because China is commanding Iran, but because Iran knows that China's support is essential to its survival. And so Trump is flying to Beijing essentially to ask Xi for help. Now, when you go to ask someone for help, especially when you need it very badly, you are not in a strong negotiating position. That is the first thing you need to understand about this meeting. Trump needs this meeting more than Xi does. And Xi knows this. And Trump probably knows that Xi knows this. And this dynamic, this imbalance of need, shapes everything that is going to happen in those rooms in Beijing. Okay? Now let's look at Xi's position because it is almost the complete opposite of Trump's. Xi is walking into this meeting from a position of quiet confidence. And I want to explain why. Because on the surface, China has also been affected by this war. The Strait of Hormuz's closure has disrupted Chinese supply chains too. Chinese factories need oil. Chinese industries need energy. And when the strait is closed, that costs China money. But here's the difference. China prepared for this. China spent years building up strategic oil reserves. China spent years diversifying its energy sources, nuclear power, solar power, wind power. China built the largest renewable energy infrastructure in the world. Precisely so, it would not be completely dependent on Middle Eastern oil. So when the strait closed, yes, China was affected, but it was not broken. China had buffers. China had reserves. China could absorb the shock in a way that Europe, Japan, South Korea, and frankly even America could not. And here is something even more important. Every single day that the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, China's long-term strategic position gets stronger, not weaker, stronger. Why? Because as Western companies scramble to find alternative energy, as Western countries struggle with $150 oil, as Western economies slow down, China is quietly doing something different. China is building the technology of the future. Electric vehicles, solar panels, battery storage, the technologies that will replace oil in the next 20 years. And China dominates every single one of those industries. So, in a very real sense, the Iran war, which America started thinking it would weaken China's ally, has actually accelerated the transition away from oil that benefits China enormously. This is what I mean when I say time is on China's side. Okay? Now, I want to use a thought experiment because I think this is the clearest way to explain the game theory of what is happening. Imagine you have two poker players, okay? Player A and Player B. Player A has a decent hand, but he has been losing money all night. He is nervous. He needs to win this round to cover his losses, and he has made promises to the people watching that he is going to come home with his money. So he cannot afford to fold. He has to play. Player B has a very strong hand, but more importantly, he can afford to lose this round. He has plenty of chips. He is not desperate, and he knows exactly what cards Player A is holding. Who has more power at that table? Obviously Player B. Even if Player A's hand is technically better on paper, because desperation changes everything. When you need something badly, the person who has what you need controls the game. That is Trump and Xi tomorrow. Trump is player A. He needs something from this meeting. He needs Xi to help pressure Iran. He needs the Strait of Hormuz to reopen. He needs oil prices to come down so that Americans stop being angry about the economy. And he needs something, anything, that he can call a win before the midterm elections later this year. Xi is player B. He can walk away from this meeting without making any major concessions and still be fine. China's economy is not perfect, but it is stable. It is growing in the right areas, and it has positioned itself to be the dominant power in the emerging energy economy of the 21st century. Xi does not need Trump's approval. He does not need American LNG. He is not the one with ground troops stuck in a foreign war with no exit strategy. So when these two men sit down together tomorrow, the question is not who is smarter. The question is who is more desperate, and the answer is clear. Now let me explain what each side actually wants from this meeting, because this is where it gets really interesting. What does Trump want? Trump wants three things. First, he wants China to use its influence with Iran to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, because right now $150 oil is damaging the American economy. And Trump knows that if this continues much longer, the political damage becomes impossible to control. Second, Trump wants China to buy more American goods, specifically American oil and LNG, because Trump has made energy dominance the centerpiece of his economic policy. And he needs to show the American public that this policy is working, that China is buying American energy, that American workers in oil states are benefiting. Third, Trump wants to be able to go home and tell the American people he had a great meeting, that he secured a deal, that he won, because that is how Trump measures everything, in optics, in headlines, in the appearance of victory. What does Xi want? Xi wants something much more specific and much more strategically important. He wants Taiwan, not Taiwan itself, not yet. But he wants Trump to change America's official language on Taiwan. Right now, America says it does not support Taiwan independence. She wants America to say it opposes Taiwan independence. That is a very small change in words, but it is an enormous change in meaning, because it would signal to the entire world and to Taiwan that America is slowly pulling back its commitment to Taiwan's security. And that is the first step toward China's long-term goal of eventual reunification. Xi also wants rare earth leverage to become permanent. China controls 80% of the world's rare earth processing. Rare earths are essential for making semiconductors, fighter jets, electric vehicles, and AI chips. China suspended rare earth exports earlier this year, and it disrupted supply chains in Europe, Japan, and South Korea. Xi wants to make sure this leverage remains. He does not want Trump to succeed in building alternative rare earth supply chains that would reduce Chinese dominance. And Xi wants time. This is perhaps the most important thing. He wants to buy time. China's long-term strategy is clear: become technologically self-sufficient, build the industries of the future, and gradually reduce American influence in Asia. Every year that passes without a major confrontation with the United States is a year China gets stronger. So Xi's goal in this meeting is not to win dramatically. It is to create stability, to buy time, to keep the relationship manageable while China continues to grow. Okay? Now, I want to talk about the hidden agenda of this meeting, because there are two things being discussed in Beijing that nobody in the mainstream media is paying enough attention to. The first is Taiwan. Think about the timing of this meeting. Right now, America is exhausted from the Iran war. Politically, economically, militarily, the American public does not have the appetite for another conflict. And Xi knows this. He has been watching very closely, and he has been making calculated moves. Just last month, Xi met with the leader of Taiwan's main opposition party, the Kuomintang, in Beijing. He told him that China will never accept Taiwan independence. And then China carefully observed how America responded. And America's response was very quiet. Almost nothing. Because America is distracted. America is focused on Iran. America cannot fight on two fronts. So Xi is going to use this meeting to press Trump on Taiwan, not aggressively, but quietly and professionally. He is going to ask Trump to adjust the language America uses on Taiwan. And Trump, who may not fully understand the importance of those words, who views the world in terms of deals and headlines, might just give Xi what he wants without fully realizing what he has conceded. And if that happens, if Trump and Beijing agree to language that shifts America's position on Taiwan even slightly, it will be the most significant geopolitical concession since Nixon went to China in 1972. The second hidden agenda is rare earths and AI. China controls the rare earths that make every advanced technology possible: semiconductors, fighter jets, electric vehicle batteries, AI processing chips. And China has been using this control as leverage. When the trade war escalated, China cut off rare earth exports, and Western factories started running out of the materials they needed. Now Trump wants China to resume those exports, and Xi is willing to do that, but at a price. And the price is likely going to be concessions on American technology export controls. Because right now, America restricts the sale of advanced AI chips to China, and China urgently wants those chips to close the AI gap with America. So Xi might offer, you reopen chip exports to China and we resume rare earth exports to you. And Trump, who favors the idea of American companies selling products to China, might agree. But here's the problem with that trade. If China gains access to America's most advanced AI chips, China closes the AI gap much faster. And AI is not just an economic technology. It is a military technology. It is the technology that will determine who controls surveillance, who controls autonomous weapons, who controls the battlefield of the future. Giving China advanced AI chips in exchange for rare earths is like selling your most powerful weapon to your most serious rival because you need their help right now. That is the deal on the table in Beijing tomorrow. And most people have no idea that this is what they are actually negotiating. Okay, let me now bring in the historical pattern, because I always say, if you want to understand the future, you must first understand the past. And there is a very clear historical pattern here that I want to show you. Think about what happens when a declining empire meets a rising empire, not in military terms, but in diplomatic terms. What does history tell us? Let's look at Britain and America in the 1940s. At the end of World War II, Britain was exhausted. Britain had been fighting for 6 years. Britain needed American money to survive. Britain needed American military power to win the war. So Britain went to America, to Franklin Roosevelt, and negotiated. And what happened? Britain got the support it needed in the short term, but Britain paid for it with its empire in the long term. Roosevelt made it clear that the age of British imperialism was over. America would not support British colonialism. And within 20 years, the British Empire was finished. That is the pattern of empire transition. The declining power needs help from the rising power. It gets that help, but it pays with pieces of its dominance, not all at once, but gradually, transaction by transaction, meeting by meeting, until one day the declining power looks up and realizes it is no longer the dominant force it once believed it was. That is what I believe is beginning to happen in Beijing tomorrow. America is the declining empire that needs help. China is the rising power that has what America needs: access to Iran, control of rare earths, stability in global trade. And China is going to give America some of what it needs. But China is going to take something in return every single time. And what China is going to take slowly, quietly, transaction by transaction, is the structure of American dominance in Asia. Taiwan language, AI chip access, rare earth dependency, arms sales limitations. Each one seems small on its own, but together they form a pattern of decline. A pattern that every historian who has studied empire transitions will immediately recognize. Okay? Now, I want to be very honest with you, because this is not prophecy. This is structural analysis, and there are things that could unfold differently. It is possible that Trump goes to Beijing and actually handles this well. It is possible that he secures meaningful concessions from China on Iran without giving too much away on Taiwan or technology. There are smart people around Trump who understand the risks, and Xi does not want total chaos either. A collapsing American economy is bad for China as well. China sells goods to America. China needs America to remain a functioning economy to keep buying Chinese products. So both sides have incentives to make this meeting appear successful, and that is actually the most likely outcome. A meeting that produces impressive sounding agreements that both sides can celebrate at home. Trump will announce a major trade deal. Xi will announce progress on stability. Markets will rise. Oil prices might ease slightly. But beneath that surface, beneath the handshakes, the state dinners, and the joint communiques, the deeper structural shifts will continue. China will continue to grow stronger in the technologies that matter. Iran's conditions for reopening the strait will remain firm. Taiwan will remain in the background, slowly evolving. And America will continue to face the fundamental problem that I have been discussing since 2024. The problem of an empire that is overextended, underfunded, and governed without serious strategic planning. Okay, let me bring this all together, because I want to give you a clear framework for understanding what to watch for when this meeting happens. Watch what happens on Taiwan language. If Trump agrees to say that America opposes Taiwan independence rather than simply not supporting it, that is a massive win for China, and it will not be reported as a concession. It will be buried in diplomatic language, but it will be historic. Watch what happens on AI chip controls. If America relaxes restrictions on selling advanced chips to China in exchange for Chinese cooperation on rare earths, that is America trading its long-term technological advantage for short-term economic relief. Watch this very carefully. Watch what China promises on Iran versus what China actually delivers. China might promise to encourage Iran to reopen the strait, but China has every incentive to let the strait remain closed just a little longer, because every day it stays closed, China's strategic position gets stronger. So watch whether Chinese actions match Chinese words in the weeks after this meeting. And finally, watch what happens to the dollar, because the real stakes of this meeting at the deepest level are about which currency runs the world economy in the next 50 years. If this meeting produces an agreement that embeds Chinese trade networks more deeply into the global system, if China's yuan becomes a larger part of global oil trading, if Belt and Road investments receive a green light, then we are watching the very early stages of the dollar's decline as the world's reserve currency. That is the real game being played in Beijing tomorrow. Not tariffs, not trade deals, not even Iran. The real game is who runs the world in 2050. And this meeting is one of the first moves in that game. I have made 3 major predictions since 2024. Trump would win. That happened. America would go to war with Iran. That happened. America will lose that war, and this will change the global order forever. I believe we are now watching that third prediction begin to unfold. Not with a dramatic military defeat, but with something slower and more permanent. A diplomatic process in which America, step by step, meeting by meeting, transaction by transaction, trades away the structure of its dominance. And it begins tomorrow in Beijing. Okay, so that is my analysis for today. This is not prophecy. This is structural history combined with game theory. I want you to keep your minds open. I want you to question everything I have said. I want you to watch what actually happens in Beijing and test my framework against reality. But if this framework is correct, and I believe it is, then tomorrow's meeting in Beijing is not just another diplomatic event. It is one of the most important moments in the story of the 21st century. And most people are going to watch the headlines about trade deals and handshakes and completely miss what is really happening. You now know what to look for.